Ma'am, if you don't know how banking works, you need to step aside and stop holding up the line. The words snapped across the marble floor so loudly that even the soft instrumental music overhead seemed to shrink. A few people turned at once. A man in a gray overcoat lowered his phone. A woman holding a deposit envelope paused halfway to the rope divider. Near the glass doors, a security guard glanced up from his station and then quickly looked away again, the way people did when they had seen this kind of thing before and expected it to go the usual way. At the center of the attention stood a small, elderly Filipina woman in a faded cream cardigan, low black shoes, and a neatly pinned skirt that looked older than half the staff in the building. Her silver hair was combed back into a simple twist. One hand rested lightly on the worn strap of a brown leather handbag. The other lay flat against the polished counter, as if she needed it less for balance than for patience. Across from her, teller Melanie Pierce wore the smile of someone who had long ago stopped confusing cruelty with efficiency. "I already told you," Melanie said, slower this time, louder this time, every word polished with irritation. "This line is for clients making actual transactions, not for questions." A few customers let out short, uncomfortable laughs. Beside Melanie, the teller in the next station, Brent Lawson, leaned on one elbow and smirked openly. "Maybe she's looking for the ATM tutorial," he said, "or directions to the pension office." This time the laughter came easier. Small, sharp, mean. The old woman did not flinch. She looked at Melanie with dark, steady eyes and asked in a voice so soft the room had to lean inward to hear it. "I only wanted to ask about my account." Melanie gave a theatrical blink. "Your account." "Yes." "What account?" The old woman opened her handbag with slow, careful hands. From inside, she removed a card sleeve, an old pair of reading glasses, and a folded piece of paper. No one could tell whether the paper was a banknote, a bill, or something she had brought from home, because she did not trust herself to remember. Brent chuckled. "This is unbelievable." Melanie did not even look at him. "Ma'am, if you need basic help, customer service is online, or your family can make an appointment for you." The phrase landed harder than the first insult. Your family, not you. Someone younger, faster, more valid. The woman lowered her glasses and studied the folded paper for a moment before looking up again. "My son told me to come in person," she said. "He said I should speak to someone here about my holdings." That word should have sounded strange in her mouth. Holdings. It should have interrupted the script everyone had already written for her, but arrogance made people deaf before it made them stupid. Melanie gave a little laugh through her nose. "Your holdings." "Yes." Brent shook his head, grinning now at the customers watching. "I'm sorry," he said, though he clearly was not. "Did she say holdings?" The woman near the rope divider smiled with the guilty delight of someone relieved to not be the target. The security guard looked away again. The old woman folded the paper once more, very neatly, and returned it to her bag. There were rumors in certain rooms of the city, quiet stories traded between people who handled money too old to be flashy and too deep to be noisy. Stories about widows who never visited branch offices, about family trusts older than subdivisions, about immigrant names sitting silently behind numbered corporations, private portfolios, land assemblies, preferred shares, and patient capital that had outlived louder men. People in private banking knew those stories. Retail tellers usually did not. They saw shoes, accent, posture, hesitation. They saw age as confusion, foreignness as dependency, softness as weakness. They saw what made them comfortable. The old woman in the cardigan had arrived 40 minutes earlier by city bus, not limousine. She had stepped out alone, with no driver, no assistant, no carefully dressed son escorting her through the doors. She had paused outside to wipe a streak of rainwater from the handle of her handbag. Then she had entered the branch as if it were any other room in the world, which to her it was. Years ago, when she and her husband had first come to Canada, banks had smelled different. Less perfume, more paper, more fear. She still remembered standing in another line in another neighborhood with two children at home and wet hems from the snow, waiting to open an account with the little money they had left after rent. The man behind that counter had spoken to her husband even when she asked the questions. Later, when her husband was gone and the questions became hers alone, other men had done the same. She had learned then what many women like her learned. Let them underestimate you. Paper listens better than pride. Numbers remember longer than insults. So she had built quietly, a convenience store first, then two, then a small commercial unit nobody wanted until the street changed, then another, then lending, then partnerships, then patience. And patience, properly invested, had teeth. Now she stood in the bright downtown branch of Halcyon Dominion Bank, while a young woman with polished nails and an expensive blowout looked at her as if old age itself were a form to be corrected. Melanie tapped the counter with one pen-clicking finger. Last chance, ma'am. Either tell me exactly what you need in plain terms or step aside for people who are actually ready. Still calm, the old woman slid her bank card across the counter. Melanie stared at it, then at her, then at the card again. It was not one of the standard retail cards. Dark matte finish, minimal lettering, no cheerful branding, no bright security iconography made for ordinary reassurance. Just a name. Lourdes R. Valencia. Melanie's face changed, but only slightly. Not from recognition, from annoyance. Oh, so now we're doing cards. She picked it up between two fingers as if the delay itself were offensive. You could have started with this. I was speaking. That drew a few murmurs. Not because the words were sharp, because they were true. Brent straightened, smile thinning. He did not like the way the room shifted even a little. Mel, just send her to inquiries, he said. We've got real clients waiting. Real clients. This time the silence after the phrase was longer. Near the back of the line, a younger teller named Priya froze where she stood at her terminal. She had seen versions of this before. Elderly immigrants waved off. Accents dismissed. Brown hands made to wait while white impatience called itself policy. She hated it every time, and every time she hated herself a little for needing the paycheck badly enough to say nothing. The old woman turned her head and looked at Brent. Not angrily, not even with surprise, just with a stillness that made him seem boyish all at once. Then she looked back to Melanie. I am a real client, she said. Melanie gave a dry laugh and typed in the card number with exaggerated impatience. Let's see, then. Keys clicked. A screen loaded. Melanie's expression did not change at first. Then it did. Not dramatically. Just a tiny break in the face. A pause too long. A blink too careful. Brent noticed before anyone else. What? He whispered. Melanie did not answer. She clicked again, opened a profile, scrolled, her lips parted. Brent leaned over. What is it? Melanie shifted the monitor instinctively, trying to hide it, but not before he caught enough to lose the smirk on his face. A code. A tier designation. Several linked entities. A client banner neither of them had ever seen in person. Only in training modules no one paid attention to, because those clients never came to branches like this. At least that was what everyone assumed. The old woman waited with one hand resting on the counter. Around them, the branch seemed to lean into its own silence. Then, from the frosted glass door marked Private Client Services, someone on the other side noticed the internal alert that had just lit up, and the handle began to turn. The handle turned slowly. No one noticed at first. Melanie was still staring at the screen like it might correct itself if she blinked hard enough. Brent's mouth had gone slightly open, his confidence slipping in uneven pieces as he leaned closer, trying to make sense of codes he had only ever seen in onboarding slides. What is that? He whispered. Melanie swallowed. It's... just wait. She clicked again, as if digging deeper might shrink the number. It didn't. The profile expanded. Linked accounts, corporate holdings, private instruments, a portfolio summary that did not fit on one screen. Brent leaned back this time, not because he understood it, but because his body understood before his mind did. This is wrong, he said, quickly. Louder now, for the room. It's probably a glitch. These systems mess up all the time. A few customers nodded. That felt safer. Glitch. Mistake. Not reality. Melanie latched onto it instantly. Yes, exactly. That's what I was thinking. She turned the screen slightly away from the old woman and cleared her throat, her voice sharpening again as she reached for authority she could feel slipping. Ma'am, there seems to be an issue with your account profile. I'm going to need you to step aside while we sort this out. The words came back, almost identical to before, but now they landed differently. The old woman did not move. I am already here, she said gently. Melanie's jaw tightened, and I said we need to verify. I came to ask about my account, the woman continued, her tone unchanged. You are looking at it now. The room shifted again. Not loudly, not dramatically, just enough that the laughter from earlier had nowhere to go. Brent scoffed, trying to recover ground. Look, this isn't how it works. You can't just walk in here and expect. The door behind them opened fully. A man stepped out, tall, impeccably dressed, dark suit cut close, no wasted fabric. His shoes made no sound on the marble, but his presence did something louder. Heads turned. The security guard straightened without thinking. Priya stopped typing entirely. The man's gaze moved once across the room, taking everything in with a speed that didn't feel rushed. The line, the tension, the teller stations, the old woman at the counter, and then it stopped, on her. Everything else disappeared from his focus. He walked forward without hesitation. Melanie noticed him only when he was already there. "Sir, I'll be with you in just a moment." He didn't look at her. "Mrs. Valencia," he said. His voice was calm, but it carried. The old woman turned slightly toward him, her expression softening by a degree so small it might have been missed if anyone had blinked. "Good morning," she said. Brent froze. Melanie's fingers slipped off the keyboard. The man inclined his head just slightly. Respect, precise and unforced. "I'm Daniel Okoye, Executive Director of Private Client Services." The words landed like a dropped weight. A few people in the line shifted, whispering now, the tone completely different. "Executive, private client." Melanie tried to speak. "Sir, there seems to be some confusion." "There is," Daniel said, finally turning his gaze to her. It wasn't loud. It didn't need to be. Melanie felt it anyway. "I received an internal alert tied to this profile," he continued. "A priority escalation." Brent laughed weakly. "Yeah, that's what we were saying. Must be a system error or something." Daniel looked at him. "Not long, just long enough. It is not an error." Silence. Full. Uncomfortable. The kind that forces people to hear their own breathing. Daniel reached out his hand. Melanie hesitated for half a second before placing the card into it. He glanced down, then back up. "Mrs. Valencia has been with this institution for over 30 years, he said. "Her portfolio is managed under our highest tier." Melanie's throat tightened. I was just trying to help," Daniel supplied. She nodded quickly. "Yes." He let the word hang there. Then he turned slightly, addressing no one and everyone at once. "High-value clients are flagged in our system for a reason," he said. "Not for spectacle, for service." The word service sounded different coming from him, sharper. He turned back to Melanie. "Tell me," he said quietly, "decade, what part of this interaction reflected that standard?" Melanie opened her mouth. Nothing came out. Brent shifted beside her, trying to disappear into the space he had filled so confidently minutes ago. I didn't know," Melanie said finally. Daniel nodded once. "That is correct." "The agreement was worse than accusation. I didn't know," she repeated, smaller now. Daniel's gaze didn't soften. "You didn't ask," he said. The words cut clean. Across the counter, the old woman watched without interruption, her hands resting calmly against the polished surface. The audience, the line, the staff, the guard, had gone completely still. No whispers now, no laughter, just the slow collapse of something that had felt permanent minutes earlier. Brent tried once more. "Sir, with all due respect, she didn't exactly present herself as—" Daniel turned to him fully. Brent stopped, mid-sentence, mid-thought, mid-confidence. "As what?" Daniel asked. There was no safe answer. Brent swallowed. "I just meant—" "I know what you meant." Another silence. He let it stretch, long enough to feel. Then he looked back at Mrs. Valencia. "Ma'am," he said, his tone shifting instantly, respectfully. "I apologize for the delay. If you would allow me, I can assist you personally." She nodded once. "Thank you." Daniel stepped slightly to the side, opening the space as if the counter itself no longer belonged to the people standing behind it. It belonged to her. Melanie's hands hovered uselessly over her keyboard. Brent stared at the floor. Priya felt something in her chest loosen that she hadn't realized had been tight all morning. Daniel gestured toward the private offices. But Mrs. Valencia didn't move right away. Instead, she looked at Melanie. Not with anger, not with triumph, just with a quiet, measured attention. "I only asked about my account," she said. Melanie nodded, eyes wide. "Yes, ma'am." The title came too late. But it came, and the room felt it. Then finally, the old woman picked up her handbag and stepped forward. Daniel Okoye did not rush. That was the first thing everyone noticed as the final shift began. He didn't bark orders, didn't raise his voice, didn't create spectacle. He simply walked, and everyone else adjusted around him. "Close this station," he said calmly without looking back. Melanie froze. Sir? Close it, Daniel repeated. No anger, no volume, just finality. Her fingers moved automatically now, logging out, hands trembling just enough to betray what her face was trying to contain. The screen dimmed. The numbers disappeared. Gone. Like the authority she had been leaning on all morning. Brent stepped back from his station as if distance might undo his involvement. It didn't. Both of you, Daniel said, now turning slightly. Step away from the counter. The words landed like instructions already decided hours ago. They obeyed. Of course they did. The room watched them move. 2 minutes ago, they had controlled the space. Now they were being moved through it. Daniel turned to Priya. You, he said. She stiffened. Yes, sir? Secure the line. Inform clients there will be a brief pause. Apologize for the disruption. Yes, sir. Her voice was steady, stronger than it had been all morning. She stepped forward, already moving with purpose, addressing the line with a professionalism that felt real this time, not performative. The customers didn't complain. Not anymore. Daniel gestured toward the frosted glass door. Inside, he said to Melanie and Brent. They hesitated, just for a fraction. That was all it took. Daniel's gaze returned. They moved, quickly now, like people who understood too late that the rules had changed. The door closed behind them. The room exhaled. But not fully, because the center of gravity had shifted, and everyone knew it. Daniel turned back to Mrs. Valencia. I apologize again, he said. You should never have been treated that way in any branch of this institution. She nodded once. I have seen worse, she said quietly. The statement didn't excuse anything. It made it heavier. Daniel inclined his head. That does not make this acceptable. No, she agreed. A pause. Then he gestured again. If you would allow me, we can continue in my office. This time, she moved. Not hurried, not hesitant, simply forward, as if she had always been meant to walk through that door. And perhaps she had. The line parted without being asked. People stepped aside instinctively. Respect, finally. Not performed, felt. As she passed, the security guard straightened fully, eyes lowered in a quiet acknowledgement that hadn't been there before. Priya watched her go with something like relief, and something else. Recognition. The door closed, and the branch fell into a different kind of silence. Not tension. Aftermath. Inside the private office, the air was cooler, quieter. The kind of quiet built for decisions that mattered. Daniel waited until Mrs. Valencia was seated before taking his place across from her. No one has reviewed your file at the retail level in years, he said. That is good, she replied. A small pause. Then I prefer it that way. He allowed himself the smallest hint of a smile. I understand. He opened her profile again, this time with full access, full awareness. There was a note on your account, he continued. A request for a portfolio review. My son insisted, she said. He worries. Daniel nodded, understandably. He scrolled through the holdings. There was nothing rushed about it, nothing careless, every movement deliberate. Your position is exceptionally strong, he said. She did not react, because she already knew. I wanted to confirm something, she said. Yes? If I decide to move a portion of this elsewhere, she said, would it cause difficulty for your bank? Daniel met her gaze, and this time there was no ambiguity. No, he said carefully, but it would be noticed. Good, she said, another pause. Then she added, almost as an afterthought, I like to know who notices. Daniel understood. Completely. Outside, the door to the private office opened again. Melanie stepped out first. Her face was pale, not embarrassed, not flustered, something deeper. Brent followed. Gone was the smirk. Gone was the casual ease. He looked like someone who had just seen the edge of something and realized too late how close he had been standing to it. Behind them, a senior HR manager walked with a tablet in hand. Please collect your personal belongings, she said evenly. Security will escort you out. Melanie blinked. I can explain. This is not a discussion, the manager replied. Brent shook his head. This is insane. We didn't do anything wrong. The words echoed. Weak now. Hollow. The manager didn't raise her voice. Your conduct has been reviewed, she said. This decision is final. Brent looked around. For support, for agreement, for someone to say this had gone too far. No one did. Not the customers, not the staff, not even the security guard, because everyone had seen it, heard it, felt it. Melanie's shoulders dropped. The fight left her all at once. Not because she agreed, because she understood. Too late. They turned. Walked, not escorted yet, but already gone. The doors opened, closed, and just like that, they were outside, removed. Inside, the branch reset itself, quieter, sharper, more careful. Priya returned to her station, hands steady, eyes clear. The line moved again, but differently. People spoke softer, listened more, waited without impatience, as if something had been corrected in the air itself. In the private office, Daniel stood as Mrs. Valencia rose. "Everything will be handled as you requested," he said. "Thank you." She picked up her handbag. Simple, worn, unremarkable, except for what it carried. Daniel walked her to the door himself, opened it, paused. "Mrs. Valencia," he said. She turned. "Yes? We are grateful for your trust." She studied him for a moment, not testing, not doubting, just measuring. Then she nodded. "Take care of it," she said. "I will." She stepped out. The branch saw her again, but not the same way. Not at all. This time, no one mistook her. No one laughed. No one whispered. They simply watched, as she walked, as she passed, as she left. And when the doors closed behind her, the silence that followed was not empty. It was full of understanding, of consequence, of something learned too late by some, and just in time for others. Because cruelty had been rewarded before. Plenty of times, but not today, not here, not anymore. If this story moved you, don't just watch. Act. Share this video with someone who needs to remember that value doesn't announce itself. Then, do more. Respect the quiet people you overlook, the elder in line, the cleaner in your office, the immigrant who speaks less but knows more. Support people rebuilding their lives from the ground up. Mentor someone who hasn't been given a chance. Challenge systems that confuse appearance with worth. Invest in character, not presentation. Comment below with stories of someone you misjudged and learned from. Subscribe for more stories where truth breaks through status, because the next Lourdes Valencia is already in the room, already watching, already deciding. And when arrogance speaks and power feels secure, it only takes one moment to correct everything. For those who were underestimated, we see you. Today showed that dignity can be quiet, but consequences are always loud. Invisible authority, quiet power, respect earned.